one of the best leaders I know. Wendell's one of the most balanced leaders I know. He is able to do so many different things and sees things strategically and also very relational. And so, Wendell, really excited to have you here today, and want to get to the questions with you in just a moment. But I also want to introduce Aisha Moses, who is our webmaster at SGR. And Aisha is a very well educated and brilliant person herself. She has a degree in the Bachelor of Science in Biology, a master's in science in medical illustration. And she is such an incredible teammate. She's been here since 2022 and has really made a big difference at SGR in when it comes to our website and all of the technology that goes on with that. And of course, also with me is my good friend and colleague, Krista Dela Cruz, who is the director of business development and a long time SGR professional. So welcome everybody. We're going to be asking Aisha several questions, but we're going to start with a couple for you, Wendell. You come from this background of websites and IT. Talk to us a little bit about how websites have evolved over the years.
Well, Mike, that's a great question. So, if you go back to the late 90s, it was Web 1.0. And Web 1.0, man, cities got their URL addresses, what have you. And, we had our city branding, had website addresses on our shirts. We thought we were hot stuff. We had it going on. But the limitation with that was that a lot of the web pages were static. The content was not dynamic. It was a one-way push, and so limited user engagement. Then we evolved to Web 2.0. Content became dynamic, and there was the introduction of several social media platforms. This was really the age of digital democracy, or e-democracy, as you may put it.
Mm-hmm.
So we did a lot of push, a lot of data content push, but also our constituents were able to interact with us on these platforms. Now we're in Web 3.0, and that's a totally different beast, right? So you've got dynamic content, you've got machine learning, you've got AI, blockchain technology. So it's a totally different world. But what I'll share with you is, we're actually dinosaurs. If you remember,
Mm-hmm.
the Jetsons actually predicted this back in the 1960s. So
Mm. I feel like a dinosaur. I come from the 60s. Yes. Um, well, given all the ways these things have developed, and there's just a proliferation of social media, why do websites continue to be so crucial, in your opinion?
yeah, when you look at websites, it's really, I'll use this acronym. It's FCI. It's your first connection impression. And so if you're a city or county or any municipality, think about it. It's the front door to your community. And so the first thing you want to do is make sure that your content, it communicates and articulates your vision, your brand for your community. Uh, because if you remember or recall, every prospective resident, your business community, they have options when they're shopping around whether they want to relocate or do business within your community. So it's important that you make sure that you have all your content updated. It's your website is a comprehensive, I'll call it portfolio of all your city services. So uh, if I'm looking for a community, well, let's say I'm going to pick on Mike here. If I'm looking at moving to the city of Mikeville, I want to look and see what kind of economic activity has going on. Look at all the community events. The one thing that you look at too is whether or not the city's using stock photos or photos from community events. You want to make this as very genuine and authentic. I actually have a story when I worked in a community. I had a prospective resident reach out and question. She looked at our website. She saw these beautiful water towers, and she asked, "Well, the water tower is going to have any type of cellular technology in the future?" And so I was just thinking maybe she was, worried about some type of interference. But what she wanted was a clean, pristine water tower. And she says, I was able to look at your website and it told me that you all had a clean community. You took pride in your community and they actually relocated from upstate. So you never know who's watching.
Yeah. Well, I had an incident a few years ago. I was working with a city. talking with the department heads, city manager. It was a very great city, neat moment. And they had a new director in that team, hadn't been there for maybe a few months. And they made a comment in the midst of this meeting that really was a cause for a pivot for that group. Because what they said was, the dynamic nature of this organization is really great. And the healthy relationships, the vision, this room, it's awesome. But they said that wasn't reflected on the website. I got a completely different vibe from the website than what really is. And that was a shocker for that group of leaders because you kind of get familiar with stuff and you get used to it. And they decided, man, we got to really update. We want our website to reflect who we really are. And I think that's one of the things I'm excited about with SGR is that through Aisha, we can offer services at different levels, and we're going to get into that can help cities make their website better. And so to me, this is really crucial because not only does it relate to how we relate to our residents and vendors and those that are stakeholders, but how we attract solid employees is, really website's a big part of that. So Chris, I know you want to jump in here. So let's bring Aisha in and let you ask Aisha some questions about this part of it. Oh, I think Chrissy, you are muted.
Let's talk about technology. I do have a few questions for you, Aisha, and I want to remind everyone participating that you can also ask questions using the chat feature. So Aisha, we're talking about website being a technology that we use and obviously for so many different purposes and how important it is. But what about some of the ways that it's changing and how do you adapt to that as a website manager?
Yeah, I in my career so far, I've seen the digital landscape change significantly over the years. And we have the rise of just from what Wendell was saying, static pages to dynamic pages, and also content management systems to help manage all of that. And now mobile technology, voice search, personalized user experience. And now what's kind of on top of everybody's mind is like the AI. And I think these trends are leading users to have a greater and higher expectation from the websites, and also increasing, competition among them. So just trying to stay up to date with these these technologies is it's critical, but it's challenging, and because increasing the technology changes, but it also increases in complexity, and we have to try to figure out how to implement them, when to implement them. When they are implemented, are they still following the best practices and the industry standards of today? So you kind of just have to keep yourself informed. It's just through continuous learning. To me, the website is just a continuously changing platform for continuous improvement.
What are some of the ways you stay on top of that? Like, how do you make sure you're staying on top of those changing technologies and evolution?
I try to do it through continuous learning, experimenting, not on the front end of the website, but on the back end, collaborating with peers. It's constantly reading and looking and using AI and using, hey, ChatGPT as well. That seems to be, it's everywhere, but it's helpful. So, taking even online courses or online conferences, it's a lot to try to process because it's such a wide variety of things these days. The websites are made of so many components nowadays.
A lot of learning, it seems like.
Yes.
So given that, Aisha, what would you suggest for a web manager? How do they find time or make time to stay ahead of things? And what are some of the things they need to be looking at right now that are out there on the horizon?
The horizon, I mean, you do have to devote time. It's just kind of like part of continuous education. and devote time. I mean, even if it's almost every day, to set aside a little bit to do some reading. And not only is like the technology changing, but the best practices that we have now may not have existed back in the day, and industry standards change. I mean, just one like small example is, and maybe you don't know what it's called, but it's a hamburger menu, and it's like the three little lines at the top that indicates a menu. Well, back when it was first sort of people started using it, it was not what we would say is an industry standard or best practice. But now it's kind of come to something, people expect and they know what it is. So a lot of times it's just introducing things throughout the years, and eventually it becomes part of the landscape. Specific things we could try to look into, or I think the AI is one of the biggest things, obviously, is and trying to just see how we can use it in the website, fit it in. I use it to help, do a lot of like streamlining things and simplifying tasks from like, and that can be geared towards user experience.
Can you go into that a little bit more, like specific examples of how you're using that and how it's contributing to the effectiveness of the goals for you as a website manager?
You mean specifically AI or?
Yeah, or some of the other things too, but I think AI is probably one of the interesting topics.
Yeah. Well, I have used it to help with it can be used for like automated content generation and personalized recommendations. It can help with advanced, like analytics analysis. I think a lot of sites are employing it as like through chatbots, AI chatbots. And although we haven't done all of these things, I've used it also to help with some code on the back end, writing meta tags, all that kind of stuff. It can really streamline it and help you. I know those are very like maybe minor things, but it is sort of just the next step in adding to your toolbox of website management.
Can you kind of connect that dot to like how those type of tools or strategies would be helpful for a local government organization, Aisha?
Sure. For local governments, I think some of the main things that local governments should, at least the public sector, is to maintain, like, use the tools if they're there, but you need to keep in mind some of the first and foremost things like transparency, accessibility of your website. What's your citizen engagement like, and maybe use it to help the government, help communicate information, deliver your services, gather feedback from the public. And then, I know there's challenges like with governments having to do compliance, but that is compliance with accessibility and, diverse stakeholders. Specifically, I have older parents, and it's very hard sometimes for them to navigate, online services and information. And I think when we employ these new technologies, whatever they may be, you still have to remember your end users and them being able to use the website, and you have a diverse population of people. So accessibility, I think, it may not be like the hot topic, but if you're going to use AI, use it to help you with accessibility issues. Use it in things that are some of your basics for your website, fundamentals, like, making sure accessible, and it's accessible. Accessibility helps everyone and not just, individuals with disabilities.
You mentioned we talked earlier about navigating this evolving, changing industry. Can you give us some examples of organizations in or outside of local government who have exactly done that and how that's made a difference?
I don't know, Wendell, can you maybe help me get some input on that?
Mike, repeat the question. I'm sorry.
So, give us some examples, if you can, of some web managers that have successfully navigated these evolutions that websites are going through, and what differences that made.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I think there's several communities across the country that are doing great things with their website. And I think what's made them become more successful, Mike, is that they've been able to develop or compile or compose stakeholders. And so these stakeholders take regular inventory of their content, all the best practices that Aisha had referenced a little bit earlier, and they come up with a regular cadence to come out and evaluate where they are. And I
Mhm.
think what's also important, and I'm sure Aisha will talk a little bit about this, but the analytics on the back end, what's actually driving that traffic. I found in some organizations in my former life that you would have access to all this rich data, but we weren't taking it, putting it to use or making it actionable. And so I think when you start to bounce that or compile all those elements together, that leads to a greater fruitful website.
Well, talk a little bit about that. How can SGR assist a city that maybe doesn't have all the resources they wish in web management?
Some of the things that I think are involved would be like offering audits of websites, just even the holistic evaluation of how those websites are they working well for users, the end users, and looking at, like in what Wendell said, some of the analytics so that you are making data-driven decisions. And one of the things is just continuously refining and improving. Don't think of it as a static product. It's like your front door, and it sometimes you have to paint it over, like, keep it up to date, because that's like, the very first impression of maybe your business, your organization, or your city. Those kinds of things.
I should just one more question in regards to this is more website refresh. What's best practice to actually, do a refresh or overhaul on a website?
You mean like in terms of years or time frame? I've
In
seen,
years,
pardon me?
years.
Yeah, I've seen like 2 to 3 years before you do a refresh. I know, for example, at the education, or that the university I worked for, when I first started, the whole landscape websites was just, I call it like a post, like a ransom note. Every website, even though it was all within the university, looked different, was designed differently. It was on a different platform and different technologies. And we finally had, a university-wide like initiative to move everything into a content management system to keep that whole, to brand it and to keep, better user experience across the whole platform. And, it's just an ongoing thing that just never ends. And we had to, as things changed, we realized the content management system that they first chose was not doing a good job. And they quickly, as far as like a big initiative, university-wide initiative, as you could pivot, we changed to another, content management system. So I think you have to stay somewhat like flexible and agile and expect things to, technology and things to change, and be able to, maybe you're not going to be like the first ones to change, but to be ready to make decisions and change when you need to. So that refresh, there's new technologies coming along all the time. So if you're looking for a refresh in design, maybe a refresh in content management system, you need something like tools that can also stay, flexible and agile and keep up with some of the technologies and incorporate them. So you have to kind of, or you're constantly evaluating what you have.
Yeah.
I have a question. Aisha, you touched on this, and this can be for Wendell and or Aisha, but you talked about ways to evaluate the effectiveness of the website. Can you is there any way you can go a little deeper on that? Like, what are some of the things that an organization would look for to gauge effectiveness of their website?
It would be some of these, like say Google Analytics, and running some audits, so whether they're SEO audits for looking at content, technical audit, like SEO technical audits to see if their website is fast enough, if it's, and it's got the speed, because all those things actually play a part in just being able to have your website found online. So, I mean, there's that's just like the top ones that stick out the most to me.
Excellent.
So you can go back to the talking about refreshing, because I'm thinking it was December of 22, I think, whenever ChatGPT sort of exploded on the scene. So if somebody did a refresher of their website in January of 22, that wasn't very long ago, and yet the landscape's changed significantly since then. What would you recommend for somebody like that?
Well, it kind of also depends on what the platform the website has been done in. Maybe the content management system, or the back end framework development. And some of those are kind of staying up to date with the newer technologies, and they're important, and they're using them in those tools already. So I know, like, some WordPress things and some plugins, they already implement AI within those things, like whether it's SEO. So people already in these tools are building in, APIs to connect with the ChatGPT and using it. And some are not. So you kind of have to see where you stand and where you want to go with your website in terms of keeping up with technology. And that's why it's just like, I think all the users expect more nowadays. So it's kind of up to you as your organization. What do you want to, provide, and how much do you want to stay competitive? And I think being competitive is that continuous improvement and refinement, whether it's even small steps. One of the things I like to, I saw a saying was, continuous improvement is better than delayed perfection. So I kind of like that saying, because it reminds me of, like, always do something and it can help.
Right. And talk a little bit about how can, through consulting and embedded services, how can SGR help a city with that, or an organization?
We can come in and take a look at their website and run some of these audits and look at some of the things. Now, some things would require total overhauls, but there are small things that you can do, such as looking at, make sure, you've got some of those, who are your users, and maybe even do like user research, just making sure that things are all accessible. And I know some content management systems have already built-in features of a lot of that, but you always kind of have to keep going back and checking that out. So, running audits, and it's just kind of an iterative process.
Yeah.
And just,
Websites are a little bit like a toddler's bedroom, right? You can't just set it and say it's done. It's in constant need of attention. And so I want to ask you about, you guys have talked a little bit about digital presence and enhancing that. And the reality, we talked about this earlier, of so many social media platforms, and sort of everybody is a keyboard warrior on a different platform or style. What's the role that a really good website can play to enhance and protect your digital presence? And how does an organization go about doing that?
Wendell, do you want to
Yeah, I
maybe
love it.
take
I think,
that? Or?
yeah, let me take a stab at it, Aisha, and you'll keep me honest, as always. But Mike, goes back to what Aisha said earlier about being competitive. And so you mentioned the word digital presence. And so, as I talked about a little bit earlier, so you have prospective residents that are looking at your communities, but also business prospects. And so making sure that you have your comprehensive plans, your economic development projects, because if I'm a resident, I want to see what activities taking place in my community. But also going back to community events, those are things when people are shopping around for the best community to live in. We all think we have our respective communities and they're the best. But this is the reason why you want to reach out to us and let us do a 10-point inspection and take a look at your overall, your web strategy, your content strategy, and let us help you out.
I think that's a really important point. You know, I do a lot of city council retreats. We do, SGR does them around the country, and we often hear from council members, sometimes staff, a lot of angst and concern about small pockets of people in the community who are, you know, attacking them, or whether it's on Facebook or some other platform. And, you know, sometimes the unreasonable hope is, could we make those people go away? And the answer is you can't. But you can build up something and have something that is so transparent, so solid, so reliable, so trustworthy that it outshines that other kind of approach. And that's what I think is the most important. You can't go to war against those folks, and they have every right. They have every right to you know, communicate and have their say. But many times it's not an accurate say. But what you can do, I think, as a city is to make sure that what you're saying in the official statement is clear and professional and leading edge. And that's what I think we can provide, help them provide.
Yeah, Mike, to your point, what I've learned over the years that, you know, you may have some of those sub sites that have that type of negative traffic or negative platforms, but if you're transparent, proactively communicating and engaging with your residents, those conversations quickly, they transition over to the city's main platform.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Well, this has been fascinating. I want to end, and either of you can take this question. When we often do advanced interviews with elected officials, we'll often end those sessions by asking this question: what did I not ask you about that I should have asked you about? So what did we not touch on that Aisha, you, or maybe you, Wendell, would say, this is really important to say before we close this webinar out?
I think you covered all the basics that I wanted to point or just mention. I don't know if you had anything to add to that, Wendell.
The only thing I would say is just in relations to it when you're shopping around for you know, content management systems, you know, I think it's good to have an internal policy to make sure how you're going to utilize the CMS, how those responsibilities and roles are going to be delegated, because the last thing you want to do is, you know, acquire a solution that may not fit your organization's need.
I think to add on to that, sorry, is that you kind of have to have that executive buy-in for the organization, because it's a big process, and you know, it's not just involving one person. So everybody has to be kind of on board and you know, and working with you.
Yeah.
And you're on the same, you know, you don't have like too many competing, you know, competing agendas or objectives or, you know, goals.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it's easy for us to forget. Oh, you know, we did our website. We don't have to worry about that anymore. And it's easy to forget. We have to maintain it. We have to continuously improve it, as you were pointing out. So I want to say thank you both to you, Wendell and Aisha, for joining us, and all of the people that are on this webinar. We thank you. And if you have any needs, you want to reach out to us, you can find us on our website. You can find Wendell and Aisha both, or Krissa, and we can do anything that you're needing. That's a part of that consulting part of our team, and maybe even embedded services. So you can talk to Wendell about that. Next week is March the 6th, first Wednesday of the month, and that means Micah Gaudet is going to be back with us to talk more explicitly about AI and how that is affecting local government. And if you were on the first webinar when Micah spoke, you know it's going to be like machine gun fire in terms of the information and knowledge he has. So I want to encourage you to sign up for that. And Krista, any last word you want to share before we sign off?
I am putting the link to the Wednesday webinar page on the SGR website. The March sessions will be updated very soon, thanks to our amazing website manager, Aisha. So you'll be able to register for those very shortly.
All right. Thanks so much. Hope everybody has a great day. And thanks again, Wendell and Aisha. And we will see everyone down the road. Take care.
All right. Thank you. Bye.